Alright, so a new Trails in the Sky remake trailer came out recently, and I just want to share some of my thoughts about it. During 2020, I played a lot of Trails in the Sky. I went through the entire trilogy. I didn't get into the other ones afterward, mostly because I don't have enough time. I really like the Trails in the Sky series, but you know, life happens. And there's a few different things that really made Trails in the Sky really work for me. First off is Estelle. Estelle has a fantastic characterization, and I really like the way she grows throughout the series. At the very beginning, she's a lot more selfish and more self-centered, but as she grows and she learns how she is situated within the culture and the world that she lives in, she gets outside of her village. She goes around the world, meets a lot of different people, really understands the world in a better way, and I think that makes for a really great coming-of-age story. And I think that the way that the first Trails in the Sky game presented that story really added to it. Trails in the Sky, like a lot of JRPGs, has a top-down kind of isometric view. And that top-down perspective really shows how small Estelle is compared to the rest of the world. Instead of viewing things from her perspective or from an over-the-shoulder shot or whatever, we instead see her small within a larger image of the world and the broader culture she's in. You get to see the city, you get to see all the villagers, and you get to see how everything seems to change between different areas and different cultures. And you also get to see the way that the material reality of the world changes as technology progresses. It gives a better political and social look at culture that Estelle is learning herself. And that is emphasized by all of the unique NPCs you see along the way. I know something that a lot of people really like about Trails in the Sky, and the Trails series in general, is how in-depth the NPC characters are. Like, some random villager you see might have their own story arc across the series that you might not even look at in a normal JRPG. And I think that the top-down perspective also adds to that, because the NPCs are seen in the same way as any of the main characters are. They are just normal people living their lives within this world. But in the remake, they're adopting a more action-adventure perspective on the game. It presents Trails in the Sky as a grand adventure, which it is in a way, but I think it adds focus on the wrong aspects of the story. Like, there's this shot of this temple that I don't remember the name of, but in the original, it seemed really small and pathetic. Like, nobody was going to this place in years. It was just a little nook in the wilderness that no one paid attention to. But because of the way the camera works and the size of the building, when you approach it in the remake, it looks huge and imposing, like it's an important part of the world. And for a lot of JRPGs, that transition from isometric to traditional 3D adventure game would really work. In Dragon Quest XI, I can switch in between the isometric view and the adventure point of view, but because Dragon Quest is largely about that adventure and seeing all these grand spectacles, I think the 3D perspective works a lot better than the top-down perspective. I don't know. Seeing the adventure presented this way just feels strange to me. It feels a lot less centered on the world in general, and more on Estelle and her party specifically. You can also see in the cutscenes. Most of the cutscenes in Trails in the Sky are, again, still top-down. But in the remake, we see a lot of close-ups and medium shots of the different characters, it seems. And in my opinion, they look a lot less visually interesting. This cutscene with the characters in the guild house technically looks great, but when I was playing this game, I was a lot more interested in the different guilds and how they looked different, instead of how the characters were feeling as I entered them. Another concern is budget, because Falcom doesn't really have a large budget. I cannot imagine that they are going to be animating these characters' faces for every little cutscene in the game. That's a ton of work. It's like a 50-hour game. And if they're just stoked during these conversations, then why have them? Like, close-ups work in movies because you get to see the actors' expressions and how they change and how they relate to each other. But in the game, I don't know. It's just nothing. It's a blank stare. The original sprites were also fairly minimalist, but they had a lot of expression to them, and they provided a lot of distance where you can sort of make up how they might be acting in the real world. And yeah, I hope I'm wrong, but for now, I'm not really feeling this remake. But again, I have to wait for it to come out. Okay, that's it. Bye.